Okay, it is 6:30, so we will go ahead and get started. I believe everybody's here. We will start with
No,
the.
Jean's missing.
Oh, Jean is not going to make it
Yeah,
today.
she has an excused absence.
Yep. Okay, so we will call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We could advance the slide. There we go. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
of the United
of
States
the United States of America,
and to the republic
to the republic
for which it
for which
stands,
it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and justice,
and justice for all.
All right. Kind of did roll call before, but now do it officially. Everybody is here with the exception of Jean, who has an excused absence. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next up is communications, and I think we're going to start with Oakville Middle. All right, great.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to honor our students tonight. Every year, each of the Mehlville School District middle schools select 14 eighth grade students to receive the Glory of Missouri Award. This honor, which is bestowed by the Missouri House of Representatives, recognizes students for their demonstration of one of 14 virtues. In a typical year, students are honored in a ceremony in the Missouri House Chamber in the presence of the Missouri House of Representatives. However, due to COVID restrictions, last year and this year, the ceremony will not take place in the Capitol. Therefore, we would like to honor these students tonight at our board meeting, both eighth grade students from Oakville Middle School and Washington Middle School. So for Oakville Middle School, we have Alex Ottenlips. He's being recognized for knowledge. Joanne Musla, Liberty. Caitlin Bridges, Equality. Alyssa Bolgi, Law. Easton Donahoe, Justice. Sydney Townsley, Fraternity. Sean Meyer, Education. Jeremiah Cunningham, Progress. Nolan Long, Honor. Amila Hasanovic, Truth. Journey Jones, Virtue. Parker Wyatt, Temperance. Delaney Brawley, Enterprise. And finally, Nora Brand, Charity. Great job, students. And once again, Board of Education, thank you for allowing us to honor these terrific eighth grade students from Oakville Middle School.
Thank you. Congratulations to all of them. Okay, Washington Middle School.
Thank you, board, again for allowing us to honor our students here tonight for these Glory Awards. From Washington Middle School, we have Brooke Newsom for Virtue. She was also recently recognized by the South County Kiwanis Club as the Kiwanis Outstanding Student. We have Connor Pures for Knowledge, Kate Punawart for Liberty, Macy Meckel for Equality, Madeline Gutjar for Law, Reagan Kirkpatrick for Justice, Isabel Amling for Fraternity, Olivia Sean for Education. She's also recently recognized as our MNEA Portrait of a Graduate honoree. We have Isabella Besancene for Progress, Kyle Wong for Honor, Eva Brown for Truth, Amra Dautovich for Temperance, Isla Kavsic for Enterprise, and Emma Ibrahimovic for Charity. We're so proud of our students from Washington Middle School. Thank you for letting us honor them here tonight.
Thank you, and congratulations to all of them. That's great. Okay, up next would be open period for patron comments related to board agenda items. I don't believe we had any signups. Is that correct, Hunter?
That is correct.
Okay. I want to make sure before moving on. Next up, student achievement. So we're going to go right back to Oakville Middle with Mr. Salzman.
All right, good evening again. I'm also on this call is Dr. Patrick Bellinger, the assistant principal at Oakville Middle School. Next slide, please, Hunter. So if you look at our mission statement, we're really focused on trying to challenge our students academically, socially, and emotionally. And we feel this ties right into a portrait of a graduate. Next slide, Hunter. Our historical enrollment data, this year we're at 673 students at Oakville Middle School. We do have 17 students in the at-home program for second semester. Next slide. As you can tell, enrollment by grade level, 8th grade is our bubble year. We have 247 students. We're projected to have around 200 or 210 incoming 6th grade students for next year. So total enrollment next year should be between probably 625 and 640 at OMS. Demographics, 16% of our students have an IEP, 6% of our students are gifted. Free and reduced lunch, we all know, is down a little bit because everybody receives a free lunch, but we're at 10% this year. And our EL population is 3%. And for the first time in a long time, we have a full-time EL teacher helping out at Oakville Middle School. She pushes into our social studies classes, so that's been a huge benefit for our EL kids this year. Next slide, please. Next slide. When we talk about access, we're looking at some of our 8th grade students and the opportunities they have to take high school credit courses. If you look at our Spanish 1 enrollment numbers, we have 88 students, which is about 36% of our 8th grade population enrolled in Spanish 1. And again, they will receive a high school credit for that at the end of the year. And then when we move into our Algebra 1 numbers, Hunter, next slide, please. 93 8th grade students at Oakville Middle School are enrolled in Algebra 1, and that's about 38% of our 8th grade population. Next slide, please. At Oakville Middle School, we feel like the library should be the hub of the building. So far this year, our students have checked out almost 6,300 books, and they've completed 1,500 reading logs. Next slide. Access at Oakville Library. Our students have access to about 9,400 print copies, 387 ebooks, and 72 audiobooks. Next slide, please. Next slide, Hunter. Our students attend the library every other week through their ELA classes. The library is also open in the morning, in the afternoon, and during advisory for students to check out books. Next slide, please.
All right. I'm going to take these next few slides. First of all, I do want to thank the board for adding our finding the funds through ESSER to add our interventionists. We are fortunate to have an ELA interventionist for English and a math interventionist at OMS. And just a little bit for explanation before I talk about these next several intervention slides. And that is that we talk about tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 interventions in schools. And tier 1 would be a support that every student gets. It's something that's offered to all of our students in all of our classes generally. And tier 2 would be more of a small group. It could be within our regular classes and just a smaller group within that pulled to the side or something like that. And then tier 3 is a targeted intervention for students who are more than, say, 2 grade levels behind in either math or reading. At Oakville Middle School, we are happy to have Madison Netherton as our ELA interventionist, pictured here. And in tier 1, she is co-teaching in our English classes, and she has also created some tools for teachers through Google Classroom for tier 1 support. And then in tier 2, she is also being in that classroom through the co-teaching method and looking at STAR reading scores. And she is helping those tier 2 mainly, but some of the tier 3 students as well. And then finally, for a very targeted intervention, she's pulling students out of class and meeting once a week during advisory time for targeted interventions with those tier 3 Next slide, thank you. Here is her data that she collected. Now, this was a very small group that she worked with, only 7 students. But the IRL is the instructional reading level. And that's what she was tracking through STAR reading. She on these 7 students, and you can see that in this group, half of those students' scores grew by at least 1 full instructional reading level, and all of the students grew by at least half a year in that 1 semester of time she was with them. And then moving forward, she would like to continue to focus on those tier 3 students, and possibly some more if we can identify any more. Also continue that once a week nonfiction intervention with students, and working on fluency. I got to see her demonstrate a fluency lesson for another ELA teacher. And she is also going to be pushing into our science classes and possibly our social studies classes to work on that instructional type reading. Next slide, please. In math, our interventionist is Ashley Eichenlaub. And fortunately, we also have another thing going on in the district, and that is the STEM DI through WashU and Math 314 through Washington University as well. And they have been encouraging us to do PDSA cycles, or Plan, Do, Study, Act. And that is what Ms. Eichenlaub did with 65 8th grade students. And so this was a tier 1 level intervention, and she focused on geometry. She is also doing some small group intervention through co-teaching in other math classes, and through providing supplemental materials, and and some targeted skills intervention groups and advisory. So that the data for her PDSA looks like this. You can see 4 different classes on geometry. Every class had at least a 72% accuracy at the post assessment, and that was an average growth of 27%. The highest average growth is that 3rd period class, which grew by 38% from the pretest. And that was only a 6-week cycle.
At OMS, we're proud of the different opportunities our students have. One being the different elective courses we offer. And if you look at this chart, you can see that we have some very popular elective courses. Our students receive 2 electives per semester, ranging from project leadaway to theater arts to creative writing. We have a publications yearbook class. So we're extremely proud of the different opportunities our students have at Oakville Middle School. Clubs and activities, we have nearly 20 clubs and activities that we offer our students. We're thankful this year that those clubs can meet in person. We feel like if you have an interest and you're a student at Oakville Middle School, we have a club for you, ranging from book battle to teen police academy to several different athletic clubs. Next slide, please. Next slide. So right now we are in the second survey of Panorama, the winter data. The data you see here is from the fall Panorama survey. This first slide is from our students. During the past 30 days, we asked the students, how well did you get along with students who are different from you? And 83% of the students responded, got along pretty well or got along extremely well. And then the next 2 slides are from our staff. How much does your work matter to you? And 95% of our staff said matters quite a bit or matters a tremendous amount. And finally, how meaningful is the work to you? And 100% of the staff members responded quite meaningful or extremely meaningful. So we appreciate the board giving us the time to tell you the Spartan story. We know you can't come and visit Oakville Middle School every day and see the great things happening, but if you have an hour or 2, we invite you to come to Oakville Middle School and see what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Open up for questions or comments.
I have a quick question for Patrick. When you were on the math intervention, you went through it quickly and I didn't know what you said, something about Washington University, and I apologize, I missed everything what you said exactly. To repeat it, could you explain what that is exactly?
So I think that it was maybe Dr. Smith a little while ago. Math 314 was something we were looking into, and Math 314 is just it's basically professional development and coaching from Washington University to improve math instruction in schools. Well, in participating in that, we got in a program called STEM DI, which is a cohort of educators who I think let me think, Riverview Gardens and Maplewood Richmond Heights are the two other schools with us. And so we're all studying how to teach math better and how to do STEM better in schools. And we're getting a lot of support. I've been to several PD opportunities at Washington University, along with our department chair, Sam Brotherton, and Bill has been there as a representative of Washington Middle, and Michelle Neese just kind of came into this in the middle, so she's kind of picking it up as she goes. I think she's pretty much got it figured out now, but there were some things that we were doing ahead of time that she had to catch up on as the new math coordinator.
That sounds awesome. And I assume then you're able to bring it back and share it with other teachers in the district, or all the teachers in the district.
Yeah, so Math 314 is every teacher is being trained on that right now this year. This is our first year where every teacher's getting some training, coaching, and we've been visiting each other's classrooms in order to improve that math instruction. And we are giving the kids a survey actually this week on how they best learn math. So that's part of this as well, some personalization.
Great, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and Bill could possibly give you some different insight as a new guy.
Hi, it's Patrick McKelvey here. I just wanted to say, as your guys' former student at Oakville Middle, I know how good of a job both of you guys do. And Mr. Bellinger, we're definitely going to miss you next year with your retirement. I know Jason Piat's going to do a great job there with Mr. Salzman next year, but we're definitely going to miss you. And again, I appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing as a former student. I know how hard you guys work, and you guys do a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Tori. I have a question, if I can, about the ELA intervention slide showing the 7 students. Is that, and I know you answered this for me and gave a little more clarity, which made sense, but are those the only students that qualify for the Tier 3 instruction within this building? And is that across all grade levels, like some 6th, 7th, and 8th graders?
That was across all 3 grade levels, but
Okay.
no, we have more students who qualified for Tier 3. Just when you're working with a small group, you want to keep it to 5 to 7 students. So those were semester 1 students.
I see. Okay.
Now she's starting a different group for semester 2. She, as Dr. Bellinger mentioned, she also pulls students out during class time or works with small groups inside the classroom too.
Okay, got it. Okay, and I guess do they get pulled within this group where they're mixed grade levels, or is it kept at 8th graders that need help in one group and 7th grade and 6th grade?
During advisory, sometimes it could be mixed grade levels, but during the day when she's pushing into a classroom, it's just one grade level at a time.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay, looks like we're good. Hey, I just want to echo what Patrick said, not from a student aspect, but from a parent aspect. Mr. Bellinger, hope you enjoy retirement, and all the best of luck to you. It's been great meeting you and knowing you. Mr. Salzman, continue on doing a great job. So appreciate everything from both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is Washington Middle.
Good evening. Thank you again for having us this evening. Mr. Bill Murphy is also on this call with us. Very excited to what we've been doing at Washington this past school year. So first I want to start off with our mission statement. Our mission statement, how we came about this is we received feedback from students and from our staff as to what do you want Washington to be? What is your ideal school? And after going through all of those responses and really honing into the important pieces that came out, this is what we as a team agreed upon. And that's what we're going to provide: a safe, supportive learning environment that promotes rigorous academics, mental wellness, self-advocacy, and voice and choice within learning. And I think you'll see that throughout these slides and also through our goals for the school year. You can go to the next slide. So a quick overview of our historical enrollment data from 2016 to now. We are the smallest middle school in Mehlville, which is great, but also we have the smallest staff as well. So you saw we took a little bit of a dip this past school year, but pretty much we've stayed pretty consistent with it. This school year, we're at 435, which again is the smallest. Our demographic data, so on the right side, we broke it down by each grade level. With our EL students, IEP, and then free reduced lunch. Our EL students, and we'll talk a little more about that in the next couple of slides, but that has been increasing, and the supports they need has also been increasing as well. About 15 and a half are IEP, that's pretty typical, and free reduced lunch, I will say that's a little bit low due to all families receiving free lunches and breakfast this school year. So when talking about our school improvement plan, just like our mission statement, we really wanted buy-in. We didn't want this just to be something that we put down on a piece of paper in the beginning of the year and then we look at the end of the year. We want our staff invested in our goals for the school year. So you're going to hear these themes throughout this presentation with student achievement, making sure that our students have the opportunities to be increasing their knowledge throughout the school year. Safety, that's a huge part of who we are at Washington, our personalization, and also just having students attending school. Next slide, please. So thinking about our first part with student achievement, one of the great things about Washington is the co-teaching opportunities that we do provide. So in the areas of ELA and math, we do have co-teaching partnerships with our Gen Ed teacher and also our SSD teacher. And what that looks like is that they truly collaborate together. And it's truly a partnership where they are both teaching simultaneously and together inside that classroom. They consider students in that class all of their students. So no matter if they have an IEP or if they don't. And this really provides our students with opportunities to have two teachers instructing and able to also give them that small group and one-on-one instruction. And we have that in every grade level, and it's based on needs. So as you can see in 6th grade this year, we only have one section of ELA and math, but next year, if the need is there, that will be 2. We also have co-teaching opportunities for social studies and EL students as well. EL has been increasing at our schools. And again, Ms. Kathy Krause is our EL teacher, and she also works collaboratively with those staff members in teaching social studies. This past year and last year, we also have a newcomers group. And that's students who are EL qualified that just need some extra support. And that number has definitely been increasing at Washington. In order to make this work, we prioritize this opportunity when we were making our master schedule. Master scheduling is really difficult. As Mike touched upon, we have a lot of opportunities for students with our encore classes, but that also becomes a barrier sometimes when we're trying to do master scheduling and give everyone opportunity. Classes are placed first. And we also place them first because we need to ensure that these staff members have the time in the day to be working together so that they're collaborating and getting those instructional goals that they're wanting to achieve in their classroom. And also we value the professional development aspect too. MTSS, so I was extremely excited last year when we announced this opportunity. I've always wanted to have interventionists here in Mehlville School District, and right away, my vision for the MTSS team, when that was announced, was kind of already brewing in my mind. And one thing that I really wanted was to bring people onto this team that staff supported and they trusted. I knew that it was going to be some tough work this year, and it was require our staff to be vulnerable. And I needed to have members of this team that they already trusted. And I'll highlight those people in just a minute. That I will say that that's one of the biggest strengths that we've had with our MTSS team, and why we've been able to make the progress we have is we didn't have to build those relationships. We had them right away. Our goals for the year. So we started off with the TFI, that tiered fidelity inventory. We gave it to all of our staff members. And I wasn't surprised that the data came back as that we needed to strengthen our tier 1 universals. We really worked on that this school year. For example, when students walk into a classroom, we want every classroom to be different, and we want to honor, our unique teaching styles, but we also want students to know what to expect. So what we agreed upon is making sure that they're greeted at the door. There's an agenda on the board so they know what's going to be happening. There's a learning target, and a learning target that's referred to throughout the day or throughout that class period. And then also, how are you assessing that learning target? So those are things, an example as to one of the universals that we're strengthening. A part of that tier 1 too, and what I talked about, making sure we had staff members that they trusted, was looking at our instructional practices. And that requires our staff members to be very vulnerable. If we have 80% of our kids in a particular section of class that isn't achieving the goals, we need to look at what we're doing instructional wise and how are we going to change that. And our interventionists really have partnered with our teachers to change instructional practices, and also, just do something a little bit different. Also, some of our goals this year was just identifying students who needed some extra support. It may be that 6 to 8 week intervention, but it also can be a strategy group that's pulled during advisory for students that need just a little bump and extra. And we're already getting ready for next year. So again, our universals, our data tracking, and also thinking about what development we need. Next slide. So here are these people that I kind of briefly talked about. On the left side, we have Jill Burstein and Katie McMullen, who are math and ELA interventionists. These two members of our staff have been a longtime member of our staff, and they're very well respected by everyone. And so they were able to get in right away into classrooms, and they were able to provide that instructional support to our staff. They continue to do that. If you come to Washington, you'll see these ladies running throughout the building all day long. They're also working with groups of students. So this may be advisory, like I talked about, in a strategy group, or it may be more of a tier 2 support where they need a higher intervention for 6 to 8 week tracking. They're also leading professional development. That's been key this year, is maximizing our time together and really teaching what we are doing in MTSS and making sure that we're all on board. And also they analyze our IXL and STAR data, which we'll look at in just a second. On the other side, we have our SEL, which is really important at Washington too. We truly believe that in order to have that growth academically, you have to have that social and emotional piece. And middle school is really tough, and it's tough on our kids, and they need that support. And Becky Beach has been able to help support our counselors with that. So she looks at the Panorama data, and based on that, she has one-on-one conversations with students, especially if they rank themselves low in a particular area, just trying to get more information from them. She has groups of students. She works on, anxiety, depression, self-advocacy, self-esteem, all those things that students struggle with in middle school. And also she's supporting our staff members in the classroom. She does a lot of mindfulness, some group circles, and we're beginning that, getting that with restorative practices, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit, but really making sure that providing that safe environment in each and every classroom. And also too, she leads a lot of the professional development when it comes to this. Go to the next slide. So I touched upon our STAR reading data. So the light blue box is the beginning of the school year, and the darker blue is this past February. So right now for this slide, you want to see the growth. And as you can see that the bars got bigger from the second assessment. So it's exactly what we want to see. Is we want to see our students growing. This slide, we want to see those bars going down. So these are students that are, needing that intervention or, urgent intervention, and we are seeing that slowly go down as well. So that's good news. And this is our IXL data. And again, you want to see that growth, and we are seeing that growth from our, I call it the fall, but it's the beginning of the year benchmark until the winter benchmark. And I attribute a lot of this work to the MTSS team. Panorama, so we, as Mike said a little bit ago, we just gave our Panorama winter assessment, so that information should be coming in soon, but this is what the fall looks like. And students reported that they felt pretty good about their self-management, 76%. And also teachers reported a sense of belonging, which is really important at Washington. Areas of growth, students identified as grit, which is not surprising to me. And I did appreciate that teachers really wanted more PD on social and emotional learning. I think that's something that's a little more difficult to pull off than, let's say, your instructional strategies that our teachers are very used to. So with that, our reports, Washington, like I said, we're our smallest school and we only have a counselor and a half. So Becky is really helping out a lot, but we need extra help and support. Mr. Adam Smith was able to help with this partner we have now had with the St. Louis County Family Courts. This is a great partnership. We just started meeting with them, and actually we PD with them on Wednesday. Mr. Grimes is from the courts teaching about social justice and building that community within our school. Also, we're having some of their counselors come in, being
Kelly, are you still there? Let's see. I'll message Kelly and see if we can get her back. Bill, are you able to talk about this here?
Yeah, if you can go back one, I can get back on track. Okay, so what she was going over was our SEL Panorama data, and had mentioned the supports that we have in place currently, and we're very excited about that relationship, the partnership with the Family Courts of St. Louis County, meeting with these student groups over this next year and deciding what that will look like, knowing that we do have the support now from this Family Courts. They offer several different programs, and we reached out to our staff to see what might be the most urgent of those programs, and working with kids on social justice in our own building of social justice and restorative practices were two that surfaced as the highest need. So we had a very good first session with them, and we're excited to continue that partnership throughout this year and even next year. Thinking about including our kids and sticking with belonging, we have so many extracurricular activities, and a few that we've even been able to add this year, ranging from robotics, student council, color guard, and we've recently started this principals advisory. And what we're doing with that is including student voice into what our school policy and procedures and routines look like. One product that's come out of that already is a student safety concern form. The students designed this based on a need for an efficient way to communicate with administration while saving a little bit of face in the social arena. They looked at forms that a couple other districts had available to their students and adapted it to Washington's needs. We'll be going through our student handbook here this spring and preparing that for the fall, again, with that student voice involved. So that's been a very beneficial item for us, a beneficial group for us to have, so that we can have a look into what our students are actually experiencing without just looking at the kids. Next slide.
I'm back now. Can you hear me?
Okay, you got it.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. That's my worst nightmare. Of course, that happened. So thank you, Mr. Murphy. We were pretty much done. So thank you so much for picking that back up. But at this time, if you guys have any questions or anything for us.
I just wanted to make a comment to say, just thank you for your presentation.
I think
How
that-
wonderful. Oh, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay. Just how wonderful your presentation was and very thorough, and how you highlighted your mission statement, as well as when it came to some of your planning, really getting that teacher buy-in and identifying when you had mentioned having uniqueness as well as consistency in all your classrooms. I think that that's just incredible. And I really love the idea of the principal's advisory. So I'm so glad to hear about that, and what a great example was given to by Mr. Murphy. So I think that's really awesome. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, and we're really proud of the principal's advisory. And again, I apologize that I got kicked off of the Wi-Fi. We've been able to already make progress with that. I don't know if Mr. Murphy touched on the piece where they did the reporting form and how we wanted to break down that barrier of when things are happening in the building, come let us know. And so that's already been extremely successful. So we're really proud of that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both.
I've got a question about the co-teaching. How did the SSD and your building's teachers kind of sit down and collaborate and figure out how to approach the students?
That's a great question, Mr. Felton. So during that time, so they all have a planner team time together. And what they do, most of our partnerships have been happening for years now. So a lot of our staff, these partnerships, they work so well together that they have that down. But a lot of that's at professional development. So Emily Cressman, our area coordinator, she helps along with myself and Bill, making sure that our teachers are having those professional development opportunities and how to look at like the classroom data and where to go with that teaching. They do a really nice job. And when I say that they own all those students, meaning like these are not just like the gen ed teacher and I'm having the gen ed kids and the SSD teachers just meeting the needs of students with IEPs. It's all students. So they work really well together, but they do spend a lot of time with those instructional opportunities working together collaboratively.
Thank you.
Hi, Kelly, it's Peggy. So one comment is just, I love that you give all of your teachers autonomy, but yet you have universals for the kids. That's a fantastic idea so that they all always know they have certain things to be accountable to. And I just think it has to make it a smoother day for the kids so that they don't get confused on what they're expected to do. But I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more about the partnership with the family courts of St. Louis County. And when you say partnership, who does somebody come into the school? What happens there?
Yeah, great question. So Adam Smith was actually the one. He all four middle schools were on a call with this. There's actually a big team, and it's one of their. We had Mr. Jeffrey Grimes, is his name. He came in on Wednesday and did the first PD session for restorative justice with us, and so. I guess it's the first time that they are able to collaborate with school districts and actually come in and provide supports. And so Mehlville is a school district that they had partnered with. So the counseling team and Mr. Murphy and myself, we met with this group of individuals last week, actually. And one of the questions were, here are all the services we can provide. What does Washington need? So we were able to really hone into what exactly we needed. One of it is that restorative justice. So thinking about how to, when we're thinking about the whole child and thinking about the safety and the relationships that the adults and the students have with one another, a lot of times it's that communication piece, and that's what the social justice provides. So we, knowing that we value that, that's one of the paths we're going down. So that's how we chose to partner with Jeffrey in regards to the social justice piece and how that's going to look at Washington. It is going to be very individualized. What Mr. Grimes had told us is that, he can even come into individual classrooms and start running a class circle, which is just, being able to talk to each other when there's issues that arise in our classroom and work together. The next thing would be, we identified with the groups. So the counseling groups, like I said before, we have a counselor, we have a full-time counselor and then a part-time counselor, and they're phenomenal, but we feel like we're always chasing, the problems and we can't get ahead of it. And so the family courts are helping us provide those opportunities for students to, have a group and work on, self-awareness or work on, the anxiety, getting strategies to put in place. So we're at the kind of the first kind of ground level of all this right now. But it sounds like we can take it a lot of different ways, in the future. So we're really excited. We're trying this out now. And then, like I said, next year, we're hoping to expand that.
It sounds fantastic. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I was gonna just touch on one thing that I really liked about your presentation, which was how you got into some of the things like with Becky Beach, your SEL interventionist, working with students on the mental health issues and such. There's been a good number of parents and Ms. Roberts, yourself and I had actually spoken a little bit about this a few months ago, just how this has been a challenging year for a lot of our students. So I really like that you put that in there, and something just for all of our parents to know that our schools are taking this very seriously, the mental health aspects, and helping our students and children out to kind of get back after what everybody kind of went through last year. So really appreciated seeing that. And also both of you tag teaming through the presentation. So thank you for that as well. Very good job. Appreciate it.
Bill's used to that. I think my internet's gone down before in some big interviews that we've had. So we've worked well together when it comes to these Zoom calls. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No problem. Nothing beats a great team. So
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is consider serving line proposal.
Good evening, everybody. So every summer, school food replaces old or not functioning or barely functioning equipment. And this summer, we are planning on replacing serving lines in 6 of our schools. Those 6 schools being Beasley, Blades, Rogers, Trotwine, Woolwind, and Washington Middle. The current ones, I don't know if you've been in our school kitchens in a while, but they're older, they're a little institutional looking. And so we are moving towards ones that have a high quality appearance. The students are our customers. We want them to feel like we're their restaurant. And when you go to a nicer restaurant, the way it looks sometimes makes the food taste better. So we've replaced the serving lines in summer of 2020 at Forder, Hageman, and Point. And these new serving lines are almost identical. They are all custom built for each school, a little different. But as far as the materials and the way they look are very similar. So if you hadn't had an opportunity to swing by one of those 3 schools and check them out, but they're very nice, and they really do make the environment more welcoming. So that is why we're moving forward with doing that. And those are the serving lines. We received bids from 2 different vendors. I did post it out on our website. So it was publicly advertised for whoever to bid, but these are the 2 that bid. Belter being the lowest qualified bidder at $431,628. As you can tell, they're very close. But they are the ones that I'm recommending that we move forward to, because they are both qualified vendors. And so it really comes down to the lowest price, kind of due to our federal procurement guidelines. So I'm just recommending we move forward with Belter. And Belter is the vendor that we went with a couple summers ago with the other 3 serving lines. And they did a fantastic job communicating all aspects of the project. Like I said, they're custom build. There was a little bit of hiccup. There was some damage to one of the tray slides that came in. Quick turnaround, got them in. And thankfully, we finally welcomed students back in our building that fall. And they were able to see the new serving lines. So that's what I'm recommending we move forward with Belter. Unless if you guys have any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And the serving lines will be paid for out of school funds.
Is Belter a vendor we've used before for the other 3 serving lines that were replaced 2 years ago?
Yes, we did work with Belter. Yes.
And is this something that's going to turn into an every other year process for the remaining schools?
Well, we did have the serving lines branched out on my equipment replacement plan over several years. So we weren't planning on doing all 6 this year, but with our current fund balance, with all students being free, we have a pretty high participation as well as a nice federal reimbursement. So we have the funds this year to spend. So I grouped them all together. And when you kind of look at the other schools that are remaining, their serving lines are a little more up to date and have a good workflow, a good serving flow for the students. So Besides these and the 3 replaced a few summers ago, I'm not currently looking anymore in the future. Besides, got a big project that I'm looking at for next summer though, at Mehlville High School.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Any other questions?
Okay. Could I get the board member to make a motion following the recommendation?
I'd
I'd like to
go
go ahead, Tori. Sorry.
Okay.
No, you're good.
I would like to make a recommendation for the purchase of 6 serving line units from Belter for a total of $431,628.
And I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Katie. Okay, next up is consider roofing bids.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey,
So tonight, we are solicited bids for roof replacement for this coming summer. This work is scheduled to take place at Beerbaum Point, Troutwine, Woolwind, Washington, and Mehlville Senior. All these are partial roofs, partial roof replacements. This is part of our 15-year roof schedule. With that said, I'd like to move to approve the lowest qualified bid by Barch Roofing for Point, Woolwind, and Washington for the total of $887,320, which includes permits, professional, and contingency fees. And Shea Roofing for Beerbaum, Troutwine, and Mehlville Senior for $816,932, which includes permits, professional, and contingency fees as well, for a grand total of $1,704,252, which all that includes permits, roofs, and permits, professional, and contingency fees. With that said, I will try and answer any questions you might have.
I just wanted to ask again, have we worked with these vendors before?
Both these vendors, we've worked Barch last year and Shea within the last 4 to 5 years. Both have done great work for us. Probably some of my top 2 picks for work with these roofing companies. So yeah, very good success with them.
Thank you, Mike.
any other questions? Okay. Get a motion to approve the lowest qualified bids as presented.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the lowest qualified bids as submitted for Barch Roofing at Point, Woolwind, and Washington for $887,320, which includes permits, professional, and contingency fees. And Shea Roofing for Beerbaum, Troutwine, and Mehlville High School, which includes permits, professional, and contingency fees, $816,932 for a total of $1,704,252 for a total roof project for summer 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are you still up on the next one?
Yes. So next up, we have consider bid for Oakville Elementary Parking Lot and Playground Expansion bid as part of the component of the Prop S implementation. This is will be constructed west of the OES property, the property we purchased back in 2020. With that said, I would like to move to approve the lowest qualified bid by Castle Construction for $1,630,000, which includes $50,000 deductions and $75,000 contingency built into that bid. With that said, Dr. Gaines, Chad, and I are here to answer any questions you might have.
Can I ask real quick on the attachment? I see 1.68 million. Is it 1.63?
That's before the $50,000 deduction we got with them to to give it a different timeline instead of being completed by the end of summer. This would go into the school year and be less overtime for them, and they were able to bring their bid down a little bit.
Okay. Does that cause any issues as far as the school by having it go into summer?
I'll let Chad discuss that a little bit.
So we've considered that. We've had ongoing conversation about the impact and possible disruption that this parking lot may cause. We also recognize its value, which is why we're making the recommendation tonight. And we think that this is a livable project. In conversations with Castle, as well as conversations with our civil engineers and architects, they have spelled out a timeline that would actually allow them to begin work in March with some of the site work and demolition of the existing building. By doing that, it advances the pace of the work that they can do over the summer, as well as minimizes overtime. And so there always remains the possibility that weather could impede progress, and that by the first of the school year, we are not completely finished, but based on the timeline that they've presented to us, we're confident that we can make this happen.
Okay, thank you.
Out of the work to be done, how much of it is the parking lot and how much of it is the playground expansion in a percentage?
I can't give you an exact percentage, but I can tell you our focus is the parking lot.
So it would be the majority of the work to get the parking lot done before school start, and the remainder of the time for what's left doing the playground expansion.
Well, and really with playground expansion, the school has a voice in that. I know that Principal Ochoa has been talking to the PTO. They're currently coming up with plans for what that playground could look like. Voters of Prop S approved a parking lot and not a playground. So we want to be mindful that our focus is on the parking lot. And then we want to partner with the school and the PTO to make a playground possible in an appropriate way.
This project, we are expanding the footprint on which a playground could exist, not expanding the playground itself.
So it's mostly green space expansion in that area more than an actual construction of equipment?
No construction of playground equipment, some green space and some hard space.
So how confident is Castle, at least at this juncture, that they can probably get the most destructive piece of it, obviously being the parking lot, done by school start?
Parking lot will not be done by the start of school. What we've looked at, the project, we have to move the entrance into Oakville Elementary from Yeager further to the west so that it lines up with the subdivision across the street. So getting that whole front part again that lays against Yeager, that is the primary focus of this early work that'll get done before school. And then moving deeper into the property, they think they can be done shortly thereafter. So,
Labor Day or thereabouts.
We're thinking that because they'll get their proposal has an early start to kind of do some of the work outside of the existing Oakville Elementary footprint, the footprint of the property. So tearing down the house, starting to get rid of trees, removing topsoil, getting some of that stuff done early. They're hoping that we're talking about an early September completion. So we're talking about maybe a couple of weeks as of today of challenges at the start of the school year at Oakville Elementary. If we have 3 weeks of rain, that could change that. If we have great weather the whole time, maybe they'll be able to wrap it up a little bit more quickly. But one of the reasons that we really kind of like Castle on this job is this is what they do. They're not a general contractor who's farming it out to somebody else. This is the kind of work they do.
I recognize their name from past bids, so I know we've done work with them before.
I do want to point out that they worked on the OHS baseball field and made good progress with it. And again, to Dr. Gaines' point, they provide a timeline that we're confident and will cause minimal disruption.
Yeah, I think if we go into this with knowledge of minimal disruption and the rest of it being weather dependent, I think this probably will be an easier thing to deal with start of school year rather than have it drag out to November. That's all the questions I had.
Anyone else? Okay, can I get a motion, please? Anyone?
I'll make a motion to approve the lowest qualified bid by Castle Construction in the amount of $1,630,000, which includes a $50,000 deduction and a $75,000 contingency allowance.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Budget development. I assume Marshall.
All right, good evening, folks. We're going to talk about next year's budget as it relates to health insurance. And I wrote up a pretty extensive write-up on the agenda, and between the schedules that are on e-boards and the write-up that are on e-boards, what I plan on doing is just doing a brief overview of just a couple of summary points that really summarizes what the write-up and the schedules were. So just a quick summary of what you're already privy to on e-boards is really the health insurance expense will be budgeted for $9,952,000 next year. That's up $927,000 or 10.2% from this current year. And the increase is really based on the $450,000 that relates back to the 2022 12% increase. And then a budgeted 7.5% increase for calendar year 2023, plus another $150,000 for additional classified open positions that we're trying to fill. There's 36 open positions. So just budgeting a portion of those, we add in 150,000. So that's how we get to the budget amount. The 7.5% rate increase that we're planning for calendar 2023 only impacts those with family or spouse coverage. So that's only 15% of all employees that are impacted. The fund balance in 2021 ended up at $8.7 million. We forecast right now 2022 to end up at 8.5 million, and then a decrease down to 8.2 million in 2023, which is a controlled slow decline of some excess funds. We've got a healthy balance, but those are all projections because we never really hit, you rarely hit on the normal assumption of claims. You've got your target, but you're usually favorable or unfavorable to some degree from year to year. So we adjust as we go forward year to year based on those as well. I think the most important thing to know and to keep in mind is that on a typical year, we count on $975,000 additional expense hitting us each year. That's due to an assumption of 8% of claims increase, which is $800,000, and a 12.5% increase of stop loss premium, which is about $175,000. So if you then on the revenue side say, okay, well, if a 1% district rate increase generates $104,000, it would take, in order to cover that $975,000 of expected cost increase, it would take about a 9.4% district rate increase. So that's sort of the norm to expect. The norm is 9.4%. That certainly makes the years of 2016 through 2021 very valued because we had 0 rate increases all of those years. But once again, the 2023 budgeted increase is 7.5%, which is a little bit below that 9.4% norm. That's really all the summary comments I have. Are there any questions?
Either you did really well or everyone's confused, Marshall. One of the two.
It's really well, and just there's a lot to take in, trying to make sure it's all understood properly. So is this likely to be, since it's following a projected trend, and obviously we can only project and assume it's going to try and come close to that projection, this is likely a game plan going forward for past 2023?
I mean, basically, we have to look at it each year. And so based on 2021 results and sort of where we want to target that slow decline, that 7.5% rate increase, that'll produce about a $280,000 net loss on the funds. So that's sort of a planned slow loss. But from every year, we have to reevaluate. So if you have the normal 8% claims increase every single year and 12.5% on stop loss premium, if you wanted to break even that calendar year, you'd have to have 9.4% rate increase. So you can pretty much expect a normal year, every year that's normal, you can expect a 9.4% rate increase. Some years will be better, some years will be worse. I don't know if that answers your question, Jeff.
So as long as we're trying to keep the losses to a slow decline rather than a sharp drop, because we're not properly covering it, I think this is at least a good game plan to keep in mind as we move forward. But obviously, we're going to reevaluate it every year, as we should.
Exactly. And if you look on the eBoard's data, that very first page shows those targeted, and those are worst case scenario targeted fund balances from year to year. The maximum was 8.4%. We don't really want to lose any more than 8.4% on a worst case basis. But, in years that we have better results than that, it's obviously good to get ahead. I look at how far are we away from break even? And we are, if we target $280,000 of net loss in the fiscal year 23 budget, we're not that far away from break even. We don't want to get too far away from break even. Otherwise, then you have the sharp spikes to get back to break even.
And since we obviously had fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21 be a little bit off for varying reasons, do you think this year will probably be a good one that we classify closer to normal than it's been for the last couple of years?
I don't think so, because I think COVID actually decreased our expenses because people just didn't go to the doctor. And so now there's going to be catch up, and there's also inflation, 40-year high inflation in general. So we'll just have to see, but I do think there's pent up demand, and I don't know. Our claims were only 3.4% in 2021. So we had a net loss of $986,000 with 3.4%. That's why we had the 12% rate increase for 2022, because we're trying to play catch up and get that net loss closer to break even.
So most likely 21, 22 are going to be sort of opposite ends of each other, but looked at as a 2-year cycle, they might be a little closer to normal.
Yeah, that could very well be. The swings are very, very significant.
Yeah. Your data is the only time I have to split screen between the attachment and your summary, because the summary makes it very easy to at least delve into it and understand. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm glad.
Any other questions? Okay. I don't think we have any motions with this because it will be part of the larger district budget, but you're probably still up for the budget amendment.
Yes, I am.
All right.
All right. So now on the current year February budget amendment, once again, I wrote an extensive write-up, had the schedules on eBoard. So my comments are really just to summarize the write-up and the schedules briefly. The operating fund net loss now will show about a $600,000 net loss after the amendment that we have. And the total budget is going to show a $2.8 million net gain. But that total budget is very misleading. And I always talk about how you can't really focus a lot on the non-operating funds. They can be very misleading. The non-operating funds started the year with a $3.3 million net loss. And now they show a $3.4 million net gain. That's a $6.7 million turnaround that has nothing to do with operating funds. The turnaround is because we added $3 million for food service revenue, and we decreased capital costs by $3.8 million because of project delays, labor shortages, supply chain, inflation, many factors that are pushing projects out of this year into future years. So all of that added a favorable $6.7 million turnaround, which is why the total budget shows that gain, that net gain now. And the non-operating fund portion shows a $3.4 million gain. It's all because of those kinds of issues. The real true focus should be operating funds. The operating funds went from a $2.6 million net loss in November to a $600,000 net loss now. So that's an improvement of $2 million, but it's primarily due to two factors. It's because sales tax revenue increased by $1,233,000 because DESE revised the way they're calculating prior year WADA. And the other piece is $747,000 favorable salaries and benefits because we started the year budgeting for a lot of the open classified positions, but we've not been able to fill a lot of them. So that's resulted in favorable, short-term favorable salaries and benefits. At some point, when we fill those positions, those expenses will, they'll be added back. So we will be incurring expenses in the future that right now we're not. Between those two factors, that's your $2 million improvement. I think, it's most critical to understand the difference between this forecast operating loss of $600,000 and a normalized operating loss, which I believe was on the last page of my schedule. The forecast shows a $600,000 net loss, but the real true financial condition of fiscal year 22 is really a $2.2 million operating loss, really because of two factors. Once again, we talked, I think, in November about $466,000 of Title I revenue that we received on this year's books that should have been received in June, but DESE delayed the payment. So that's revenue that we show this year that really shouldn't be there. So if you want normalized net loss, you have to eliminate that $466,000. That would make our $600,000 net loss grow by about $500,000 to $1.1 million. And then the other thing is the open classified positions, that if we add like 80% of those open positions, that's going to add another $1.1 million of salary and benefits. And so when you add the $1.1 million of expense that would hit in the future, once we fill those positions, that pushes the loss up to $2.2 million. So that's really the normalized loss that you need to at least consider versus the $600,000 net loss it's actually showing. And then finally, just discussing the finance dashboard that we talked about this in the finance committee. When you look at the financial statements that are in the consent, on the very last page, I think, is the finance dashboard. Well, once again, we have these net losses, these net operating losses, why is that? Are we mismanaging things? What's going on? Well, I think it's really key to understand that Mehlville ranks 22nd in the tax rate on that dashboard. You can see that. Mehlville ranks 21st in the operating expense per student. They rank 22nd, which is last in debt per student, which represents more of the capital, project infrastructure. Mehlville is the 4th largest school district of the 22 county districts. And when you look at Hazelwood, Rockwood, and Parkway, Hazelwood's a little different because they have lower assessed values, so their tax rates have to be higher. But Rockwood and Parkway have either similar or higher assessed values, and yet they also have higher tax rates. So if we just had the Parkway tax rate, that would be 34 cents higher. It would be $7.2 million more revenue. Rockwood would be 46 cents higher. That would be $9.8 million of additional revenue. So when we look at why we have, the deficits, you can't ignore the finance dashboard. So those are things to consider as well. That's really my summary comments for the budget amendment, and just looking to have these budget amendments approved.
Does anyone have any questions or they want to ask about this first? Can I get a motion to approve the budget amendments as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget amendments as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, Marshall. Strategic plan update, safety.
Well, good evening, and Mr. Smith and I are here to revisit some of the goals that are found within the strategic plan as they are categorized under safety. So if we can think back to the presentation that Mr. Westbrook, Director of IT, gave last month on the work that his crew is doing to support IT needs across the district. He mentioned that part of that work included the installation of cameras being in the strategic plan. So I wanted to make sure the board saw what the plan for putting those cameras across all of our schools was through 2025. Remember, it's a 5-year strategic plan, so we'll be operating within that time. And we are trying to get to the schools that, middle schools specifically first, where there are not a lot of cameras, and then shoring up our high schools. And then at the tail end of this work in 2025, we'll be adding cameras to schools that already have cameras, some of that acquired through title funding over the years. But wanted to offer a word of praise to Mr. Westbrook and his team for their continued work and how it fits into the strategic plan. Also in the plan are goals for improving traffic flow and safety. And in our work, Mike, Dr. Gaines, and I meet with the architects and our engineers, and we're having very early conversations about what site improvements and parking lot improvements could look like in schools like Hageman and Troutwine. But I also want to point out that we're trying to be as efficient as possible to make improvements within our existing footprint. And so since the last time I came and presented on safety to the board, Dr. Gaines got us on the roof, and we looked at some of the traffic patterns of Bernard Middle School, and we were able to make adjustments without any increase in cost. And that, I believe, as a parent who commuted to that school and continues to send my daughter to that school, have made traffic patterns much safer at Bernard Middle School. So while we're thinking about improvement in the context of the strategic plan and Prop S, we're also looking for ways to be more efficient in our daily operations. We're also spending a tremendous amount of energy and time on the front entrances, and we're having regular conversations about how to make those front entrances safer, including new conversation about locking mechanisms where the office could be locked down, and conversations about bollards. So if you go to Target, there are those concrete balls in front of the store that prevent vehicles from crashing into doors, et cetera. I can tell you from driving on the ice today they work very effectively. So we are having conversation around those, as well as improving the ADA accessibility. Bathroom renovations have, especially at Oakville High School, have been the topic of significant meetings as of late, and we hope to be bringing you some of our bid awards to be considered in April, as well as for the front entrances. But there's some exciting work being done there, and we are including Mr. Brennan and students from Oakville High School as we look to improve the layout, the accessibility, the safety, and the aesthetics of some of our bathrooms at Oakville High School. Air quality remains a very important topic, and as you know, we're having significant work done with our HVAC systems. But I also wanted to let you know and give credit to Lori Treader-Larkin, who has been working to acquire some supplemental funding through the COVID-19 K-12 supplemental school funding grant, which will likely give us the ability to bring in air purifiers to many of our learning locations. And we're still awaiting the state contract to be finalized and formalized and sent to us so that we know the exact dollar amount. But there's been a lot of work behind the scenes to improve air quality through that process. I did want to update the board and just kind of show you some behind the scenes fidelity of safety practices. As you know, our schools have safety drills throughout the year. They have the entire year to conduct these drills, but I think what you can see from this table is that they conduct these drills in a very proactive fashion, and you can kind of see which schools have conducted which drills. This work is in no means done, but it will continue through the school year, and I applaud the principals for prioritizing safety and making this a routine that students easily understand. And then recently the board approved policy surrounding behavioral risk assessments. And so I wanted to touch on that just a little bit. We actually started working with the Center for Educational Safety, which falls under Missouri School Board Association, prior to the pandemic. And we had training on risk assessment with counselors and principals and select teachers. Since the board approved that policy, we've reached back out to them, and we intend to once again continue with that training this summer. We're trying to finalize a date. We're looking at anywhere between August 8th and August 12th. They offer free workshops on risk assessments, and a lot of it is based on work that came out of Colorado, where they provide you with scenarios, and they have the team actually look at a case study, and then it guides the team on what possible solutions are that can benefit students and kind of provide wraparound services and minimize any risk to the student or to the school. And Mr. Smith and I are working together on that. But we do plan to implement that training through the existing crisis teams and have district components, including SROs, participate in those crisis team meetings when appropriate. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith.
Thanks, Dr. DeKemper. So along the same lane of safety, we also have some focus areas in belonging and well-being and wellness for students. So one of the strategies is monitoring our students' belonging response rate in our SEL surveys. So as Ms. Roberts had indicated, we are wrapping up the winter session of the survey window right now. So probably in about 10 days, we should have another data point to add to this. But you can just see in grades 3 through 5, when you look at the aggregate of our 11 elementary schools, 75% is our current, as far as September of 2021, response rate that are positive around that theme. If you go to our 6th through 12th grade, you see it is a little bit of a dip. And I'm anxious to see what that response rate looks like from the most current data over the last 2 weeks when we get those results back. But they're at the 45% response rate for kids that are in middle school and through 12th grade in our school district. So another area in the safety aspect of the plan is equity correspondent teams that schools are starting to develop this year. So I'm pleasantly surprised that 32% of the sites have already a team comprised of students, and they're also starting to meet consistently, usually on a monthly basis. And the other 68% of our sites are in the process of establishing a team, and I feel very confident they'll have active and working teams ready to go by fall of 2022. The last slide that I have tonight that I'm really wanted to just kind of put that linkage in with multi-tiered systems of support. I know this aspect's really focusing on safety, focusing on our SEL interventionists, to the total of 10, 3 of which we'd had previously, 7 are added additions through the ESSER funds. We also have 11 schools that are piloting telehealth through Hazel, and that's going pretty well. We probably have about 150 families that have been served through that resource this year. So I think that's a good start coming out of the pandemic. The one part that I also want to kind of point out is that both high schools decided, instead of going with the SEL interventionists, they wanted to do a partnership with Chad's Coalition. And so each high school this year started out the school year with a SEL coach, as well as an SEL family support coalition who's a therapist, a certified therapist. And we just had a meeting with the Chad's executive leadership team, as well as Mr. Lander, or Dr. Lander, and Mr. Brennan last week. And I'm pleasantly surprised and extremely proud to report that the SEL coaches, one at each high school, collectively had 201 impacts with classroom supports, student groups, and mentoring sessions in the first semester of this school year. On the other side of that piece, with the family support clinician, there were 558 touch points for crisis interventions, counseling sessions, case management, and student school support meetings that those 4 individuals had in our district. So there were 759 interventions that were able to have first semester alone this year that were positive, that were there to support students and their families that we haven't had in the past. And so I think there's some good pieces that part of the strategic planning process are really starting to be implemented. And I'm excited to see what the fidelity is going to look like in the future years as we continue to work through these processes and these supports for our students and our community. So with that, Dr. DeKemper and I will do our best to answer any questions that you may have tonight.
I have a couple questions. I don't know if I should bring this up now or during Prop S update, but I'll bring it up now since we're talking about safety. I've heard some pretty grave concerns about the baseball fields at Mehlville, and I know those upgrades got delayed due to pricing, and we were trying to cluster jobs together. But is there any update on that particular job in terms of making it a little safer? I understand there's 5 sewers actually running through that field, which I'm sure complicates things, but just that it's almost reaching, it's so decayed, it's reaching the point of extreme safety issues, perhaps.
I can offer that it's still on the radar, and we intend to keep our promise to the Prop S voters. The bids did come in higher than we expected, but it is our belief that by scaling the Mehlville baseball site work with parking lot work and potential transportation work, we may find some cost savings there. So it continues to be a topic of conversation for us.
Okay, so, and I understand right now is just such a hardship with pricing and inflation and supply and demand and all those things. So I get it, but I just wanted to get an update on that. And then that said too, I'm assuming that with bidding, we're trying to bid jobs together whenever it will be beneficial to the district with perhaps the same construction companies, just to try to reduce costs. And but I think I remember Dr. Gaines actually has gone over that, and you've switched things up to make things more cost effective.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And then as far as do we work, does the strategic plan work together with Marshall and the finance committee in terms of trying to figure out the best strategy, or is that just in-house? We don't do it. Does that, I can't talk, sorry. So does the fiscal plan correlate with the strategic plan, and do we get our finance committee involved in that at all? Or is it just
So-
central office?
So there are internal conversations taking place. Marshall and I continue to have conversations. I did read the notes of the recent finance committee meeting. I believe that was earlier this week. It was Tuesday. And Marshall has extended an invitation to myself and others to come and be a part of future conversations as it pertains to Prop S. And when invited, I will be sure to be there.
Great. All right. Thank you.
All right, any others? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next up is an ESSER update.
Good evening, everyone.
Dr. Gaines, I'm not sure if you're talking, we aren't hearing you.
I'm shooting him a text right now to let him know.
Okay,
Yes, no, maybe.
There we go.
here we go. You're back. You were back. What do you think, Hunter?
He left and just came back, so we'll see. It should be working better now.
Okay,
See.
just got to reboot it, turn it off and on again.
Uh-huh.
All right, so let's see if that's going to work.
All right, there we go.
So we can jump to the next slide. You know, ESSER, the funding mechanism, it's all federal funds. And as we've talked about before, we'll get reimbursed by the state up to, or get reimbursed up to the allocation amount for expenses that are allowable. So what happens, we send a request for reimbursement. That goes to DESE. DESE's kind of holding this pot of funds, and we just draw it down over time. And there is kind of a funding depletion timeline that's in the next slide. So for the ESSER 2 funds, we had last year, the current year, and next year. For ESSER 3, that extends a little bit beyond that. However, there has been some conversation at the federal level of extending ESSER 3 a little bit longer, especially for construction projects, because districts are running into supply chain issues. So there is some struggle of perhaps getting those projects completed by these FER dates. If we go to the next one, next slide, we can see the overall projects or concepts that the funds are being spent on. This is something that we went over back in May, and that when the board approved our initial plan. So we've just kind of been working on all the way through that. And in the next slide, you can see that overall budget. In the next slide, you can see what that looks like at the elementary level by year and by whether it's ESSER 2 or 3. And again, ESSER 2 runs out before ESSER 3. So here's elementary, there's elementary, middle, and then we can see high school as the last slide as well. Now, from the original budget that we had put forth, our interventionists ended up being a little bit more. So here you see the learning recovery number has jumped up a little bit. Now, when we prepared all this a couple of days ago, we were saying that only Missouri and Rhode Island have yet to release those ESSER 3 to districts, and that there was a March 24th deadline. Well, the Missouri Senate passed it last night. The Missouri House agreed to the Senate version today, and the governor has signed it. So the next slide around what happens if the deadline is not met is completely mute. But we would ask for the board to approve our updated ESSER budget. But we'll try to answer any questions you might have.
So if I'm reading this correctly, the interventionist funding will continue through ESSER 3 through end of fiscal year 24, and that's when, if we want to continue it, we'll have to find funding to do it out of our own pocket rather than out of reimbursable ESSER funds.
That's correct.
Anything else? Any others? Was the motion that you were looking for to approve ESSER fund changes?
To approve the updated ESSER budget, yes.
Okay. Something
So
like
moved.
that. Okay.
Motion to approve the updated ESSER budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes. Great, thank you. Now Prop S.
Right, so we've got a little bit of a Prop S update. So as we look ahead, we've got a number of bids coming due soon. Or we're getting ready to go to bid on projects. So we've got work at Oakville High School that includes a security entrance as well as some restroom renovations. At Blades, we've kind of got the security entrance and kind of flip of the new entrance. And then the next slide, we've got Point, Rogers, OES, and Bernard, those security entrances. That's one big bid package. So as kind of a question earlier, we do have some projects that we're lumping together in a big piece. So we'll have those in about 2 months, ready to go to be reviewed by the board. And then Beer Bomb, we're looking at the first part of June, maybe hopefully earlier if we can make that work. We'll have to see. So as we kind of look ahead, we are trying to standardize the security vestibules as much as possible, but we do know that there are going to be some slight variations from building to building, just in terms of how those will operate. We have continually been faced with landscaping requirements from the county, as well as a new requirement that I'll be talking about shortly. And then in the safety update, Dr. DeKemper showed you a little bit of what the Hageman parking lot or that Hageman entrance is going to look like. We were concerned of whether or not that was going to meet the site requirements that are necessary to put that there. It does, so that was good news. But that project is going to require some sidewalk work out on the front because we are going to disturb that sidewalk. We're also doing some playground work at Hageman, just improving accessibility to it. But it looks like that part of the project is going to be much simpler. The OAS parking lot, that got bid tonight, but the challenge with that has become a new ordinance from the county that may require electric vehicle charging stations in renovated parking lots. So that's not just an Oakville Elementary issue. That could be an issue in other places, other locations where we're going to be doing parking lot work. So we're going to be doing that entrance at Hageman, so it could come into play there, as well as Beer Bomb, just to name the first couple. And then we were going to do some pretty significant stuff maybe here at Mehlville High School. So that will come in to play maybe. We've kind of been engaging on what that could look like. From a contingency standpoint, we talked back in November around this 5.3 million starting contingency. You know, it grows with interest, although there's not a lot of interest being earned these days. Some projects are a little bit simpler and maybe a little bit less expensive than what we thought, but other projects are definitely coming in more expensive. So if we kind of look at that and kind of our, you know, a somewhat recent interest update, it's grown a little bit with that interest, but you'll recall from November maybe that Forder HVAC had come in a little bit under. That's on the next slide, but the OHS ball fields were a little bit more. And as I've mentioned, you know, we are seeing some projects that are simpler than first thought. Some projects we are just simplifying in order to reduce costs. And some projects we, you know, put together something that we think is going to work, and then we realize that some code issues are going to really drive up the cost. So we can tweak it a little bit to reduce some of those costs. So if we look at the next slide in terms of what we can do, I mean, right, we've talked about this before. Costs are just higher than when we estimated those back in 2020. We also know that supply chain issues are extending construction times. And we kind of talked at length on November 16th about how we can leverage Prop R and Prop A and our 410 fund and these ESSER HVAC dollars to stretch our Prop S dollars. But it's becoming abundantly clear that construction costs are escalating well above where they were in 2020. And that 35 million is just not going to be enough to cover the projects that we've laid out with the contingency. So as we look at the finances and what we've spent so far, we are going to have to start a conversation around what projects may fall away. We just are not going to have the funds to do it. I was talking to a colleague last week. We were talking about construction prices. They had recently passed something, had bid a large project. They had estimated and asked for $30 million, and the bids came in at 55. So it's not a Mehlville problem. It's something that districts all over are facing, but it's something that we're going to have to figure our way through. So we'll be having a conversation with a group on Monday around beginning to think about some recommendations of what projects we might get delayed and what we may not be doing. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Anyone have any questions? All right. I think we are good, Dr. Gaines.
All right. COVID update, we really don't have anything to share in the way of data. We've been using our internal data at this point. All of our school buildings have been above or been below the thresholds for a couple of weeks now. So we've been fairly consistently in a mask recommended environment. We are we have two changes to the resolution from what was adopted last time. One of those being we had a thing in there about some limited on-site testing. We have been doing that at the 2900 Lime building. The third-party provider that's been doing that for us has backed away from doing so. So we've lost that provider. So we've taken that limited testing language out. We do have a few tests available, just not where we did before. So we didn't want to overpromise on that one. And then the other piece came from our health services department about just some clarity around masking being required when students visit the nurse's office. If we view those very much as a health facility, and I mean, I had some doctor's appointments earlier this week. I had to wear masks everywhere I was in those facilities. So they're asking that that we treat the nurses' rooms as health facilities and require masks in those. So those are the two changes. Otherwise, we've just pretty much changed the dates and everything else has stayed the same. But we'll attempt to answer any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Let's see. So this one is going to be requiring a motion.
I make a motion to approve the COVID-19 resolution as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Gaines. Okay, next up is action items by consent. Are there any items that anybody would like to pull? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve action items by consent?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next up is communication, starting with standing committee reports. How about if we go around the room? Larry, do you want to start off? Do you have anything from standing committee reports? You're on mute.
Like I said, one of the things that's coming up is March 7th. We're having the legislative conference up in Jefferson City, and I've been asked to sit in on a 4-person panel discussion about advocacy. In terms of just the number of bills that are out there, right now we've got, I think, something like 523 House Senate bills, and there's 98 we care about. And I think there's 1,300 on the House side, and there's about 288 of those we care about. So there's a lot to consider, but I wanted to spend my time to tip my hat to Jeff. Jeff has taken kind of the outline I put together and really put some neat detail to it, which I think is going to be real helpful when we get past March 1st and they can't file any more bills and we can really dig into this. So that's what I've got to offer. Jeff, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, the number of bills that seem to be appearing is kind of interesting. There's a lot of bills that are focusing on various aspects. Parental rights is one. There's probably a dozen plus bills that have that in some form. There's obviously the usual ones for revenue, curriculum. I mean, sometimes there's pieces of bills that are appearing in other bills. There are definite duplication of efforts between the Senate side and the House side. And it's just a frenzy of trying to see what's going on. And eventually, thankfully, it will stop next Tuesday when they can't file anymore. But there's a number of bills that are definitely taking traction, and an interesting one that's coming up and starting to move with some speed and direction is changing school board elections, where it will, from one of the bills, and I don't remember the number offhand, it will take the elections, suspend them for 23. Everybody currently on a board will get an extra year. They'll move to November of 24 and will basically have 5 seats up for election rather than the usual 3 and 2 split between the 2 years.
And if they move it to November, it'll be on page
gonna-
8 of the ballot.
Yep.
It'll be partisan, and what you'll see is one year you're going to get 4 Republicans elected, one year you're going to have 3 Democrats, and it's going to go on and on. It's going to be a mess.
And especially it's going to go through and cause issues. Some of the pieces to that are also tied into, you're going to have to declare a party on a nonpartisan, what used to be and still is, at least for now, a nonpartisan mission. There's a lot of traction trying to make that move in all manner of ways. And I mean, there's usual bills of trying to make curriculum changes, to put curriculum up for review. It's a lot going on and it continue for the foreseeable future. But thankfully, since they have the budgetary items now, hopefully, we can.
Yeah, I would say the 2 biggest areas they're going after right
A
now.
lot of what they've had to do is come through and has to work on. But I think
the only
probably
2
curriculum and
Yep.
probably parental rights are probably the 2 ones that start moving forward.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else, Larry? Nope. Tori, do you have anything to report on?
Finance committee, but Marshall went over all of that. It was a really good informational meeting and discussion. But I did want to highlight that I guess it was last week, having the opportunity to go to the special screening of Delivering Hope, which was a documentary created by one of our alumni who is in our Alumni Hall of Fame, Kevin Klein. It was an incredible movie, an incredible event. I wanted to thank Jess and Hunter and Jenny Bess and the Nodelman staff for all of their efforts with that. The goal, I think, for them is for Kevin Klein is that it will be available through streaming next year. So hopefully that's the case, because it's something that I think everyone should see. I love the fact that he and his wife went into our schools when they were here in town, to our both high schools, to visit with students and talk with them. And I just love the fact that we're finding opportunities to highlight our alumni and bring them back to connect with our students. I think it's exceptional, and I'm really grateful to see all of that.
Sounds good. Jeff, anything else to talk about?
We had a policy meeting where we've rediscussed a couple of policies, one relating to staff attendance and the other one related to hiring. Those have gone back and forth a couple times with policy, so we're looking to do internal revisions on them and then probably bring them to the board, hopefully not this coming meeting, but most likely the following meeting.
Okay. Thanks. Peggy.
Just policy also, I did ask the HR to get together with finance and give us some fiscal impact numbers on a policy change that has been asked to be made to support staff leaves in terms of around maternity leaves, to basically align and mirror what we approved for professional staff. So they are going to get those numbers, rewrite a bunch of the policy, and then submit it to a few of us for review, and then to MSBA's legal department. So hopefully we will have that all to you soon.
Great. Thank you. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. I was also in the finance committee meeting, which was really good, but I don't really have anything to add. So we're going to finish as per custom with Patrick.
I was really worried I was going to get left out there, Kevin. Thank you. I was super concerned. So I have my phone. I made a little note. So I just want to say congratulations to the Mehlville and Oakville girls swimming team for their fantastic season. Some of the swimmers from both teams competed at state. This also applies to our girls and boys wrestling team. I'll get a little bit more on them later, but they also competed at state this past weekend. And then I wanted to wish a good luck to our boys and girls basketball team as they compete in districts in the next week or two. I believe OHS. I don't want to go through all these. Sorry, I don't want to get it wrong. So, but anyways, I want to give a special shout out to Ethan Venable. He's the sophomore at Oakville High School. He came in second place at his weight class this past weekend at state. He was 39-2 on the year. Again, that's a ridiculous accomplishment, regardless of whatever year the student is, but to do it as a sophomore is even more impressive. So I just want to give a special shout out to Ethan. That's a huge accomplishment. The district is really proud of you, and congratulations. That's all I have.
Great. That is an awesome accomplishment. All right. Next up, we would have open period for patron comments on non-agenda items. I don't think we have any, but Hunter, I just want to verify that.
We do not have any.
Okay. Tori, can you do the authorization for closed session?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion to enter a closed session meeting for the purpose of reading of minutes of previous meetings and corrections and approval of same and other items under the Missouri Revised Statute 610.021, subsections 1 through 21, and 610.022, subsections 1 through 6, hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting particular employees, 610.0213, preparation for negotiations with employee groups, 610.0219, and individually identifiable personnel records, performance ratings, or records pertaining to employees or applications for employment, 610.02113, legal action, causes of action, or litigation, 610.0211. Kevin.
Yes.
Peggy.
Yes.
Larry.
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Tori. Yes.
Okay. We are going to move to closed session, so we will close this. And for everyone going to closed session, let's just go ahead and pop right over to it, and then we can start when everybody's ready. Thank you.